I'm sorry, but to me, being 45 with no fucking kids and no fucking husband, talking about I'm still trying to find the right one, is not a flex. That is not, baby, you are damaged goods at that point. I know y'all hate when I call y'all that, but time does not fucking play. And y'all want to sit up here and be like, oh, in my 20s, this is my 20s. That is your prime, girl. Get the best. You are going to get the best man you can get in your 20s. And y'all think it's all fun and games because you're cute now and your tight little waist and all that stuff. That shit gonna be gone, girl. You know what I mean? Like right now. Stop fucking playing around. Now, if you're not married and you get pregnant in your 30s, it's probably best to keep the fucking babies because we don't know when your next opportunity gonna come.
When talking about marriage, prioritizing getting married in your 20s is the wrong move because you're not fully developed in your 20s. Your 20s are messy. And until your frontal lobe has fully developed, you're not even a fully formed adult. For women, the age that the frontal lobe fully develops is said to be around age 25. Now, for some of us, I think it happens a lot later. I would guess mine fully developed when I was 35 for a lot of reasons, which I won't get into in this video. Now, there are a few guys I can think of who I dated in my 20s who if I had continued dating, would have probably ended up marrying. And I'm so glad I didn't. I was an absolute mess in my 20s, which I didn't fully realize at the time. And I'm not extremely different now in terms of my core personalities. Like my morals haven't changed. I've only become stronger in my convictions of being a good person, but I've learned so much since then. And I'm a lot more mature, as you would expect when you get older. It wasn't until my 30s, after my relationship with my ex-fiance, the relationship ended, we'll just say that. It wasn't until after that relationship that I started learning about narcissism, and that's helped me so much in navigating relationships going forward. And I'm pretty sure one of the guys I probably would have ended up marrying if I had continued dating him in my 20s was and is a narcissist. I can see so clearly now that that would have been a terrible decision to end up with this guy. It wasn't until my 30s that I started learning about people pleasing, and I kind of always, I guess, knew I was a people pleaser, but I didn't have the language for it. I didn't realize how detrimental it was to my well-being. And now I'm, a recovering people pleaser, I like to say. I do have my moments, but for the most part, I am almost completely cured of my need to want to run myself into the ground just to make other people happy. Imagine if I'd gotten married and had kids in my 20s. I probably still wouldn't have that awareness now because I would have been so focused on that family dynamic. Basically, I think it would have stunted my growth emotionally and psychologically. They say that people who experience trauma usually end up mentally being stuck in the age they were when they experienced said trauma. And I would argue that getting married and having kids when you're too young to really understand what it's all about is a form of trauma that stunts your growth and prevents you from learning a lot of things. Now, raising kids and being in a marriage teaches you things, but when you're too young to understand, when you're not yet mature enough to understand the complexities of relationships, the dynamics of partnership, the importance of nurturing your children rather than being abusive or neglectful, well, you ultimately could end up traumatizing other people, but also you yourself end up kind of traumatized because you experience a lot of toxic things in those instances. I didn't know how to handle conflict in my 20s, and while I'm not perfect, I'm much more calm now. I'm more rational. I think things through. I take my time. I hold my tongue when I feel it's necessary. I'm extremely slow to anger. It actually takes a lot to get me riled up, and if you actually see me crash out, you know you done fucked up. But in my 20s, it was a little bit easier for me to let someone provoke me and to react to it. As you get older, you hopefully become more steady, more even-keeled, more level-headed than you were in your 20s. A few years ago, I was on Bumble BFF a lot trying to make friends, and I hung out with some women in their 20s, and I could feel the difference. I could feel the chaotic, insecure energy with some people in their 20s, and I get it because I was there. Being in your 20s kind of feels like a second version of adolescence. Like when you hit puberty and you're figuring things out and you feel uncomfortable in your body and you feel awkward in social settings. I feel like a lot of the 20s are just a slightly upgraded version of that. And you also care more about fitting in when you're in your 20s, as is natural. It's a natural phase in your development to care what your peers think of you, to the point where you might sacrifice yourself, who you are. You might do things out of character just to be part of a group. But after a certain age, that becomes extremely unappealing and you stop caring as much. Sometimes you stop caring completely. You realize when you get older that the opinions of others only matter to the degree that they are actually affecting your life, financially or otherwise. You realize the importance of your mental health and not keeping toxic people around you. And especially if you grew up in a toxic family, when you're in your 20s, you're still, unless you've lived away from your family for a long time, a little bit possibly enmeshed within that family dynamic. And so it's hard for you to see toxicity for what it is, a detriment to your health and well-being. And so you will actually put yourself in situations with other toxic individuals because it feels familiar. That means having toxic friends, that means having toxic partners, and that means starting families and passing on that toxicity to your children. So no, generally speaking, the 20s is not the best time for you to settle down, get married, and have kids. It's actually the worst, generally speaking. Of course, there are outliers, as is with most things. Sure, there are people who have been married to their high school sweetheart for the past 20 years and are blissful. Well, I'm not sure of that actually, because relationships can be tough. But I'm sure there are relationships like that that have worked out, are, I guess, have lasted. But just because a relationship has lasted doesn't mean it's been good. The people I know who waited until their 30s or 40s to have kids are so still. At least the examples I've seen, they're patient with their kids. They're more thoughtful with their kids. They've had time to fully bake themselves. And so now they're able to parent with a lot of wisdom that they wouldn't have had if they had kids in their 20s. And while, yes, a lot of people would argue that having kids in your 20s with someone else who is also in their 20s is the best physically because you bounce back quicker, and once your kids are grown and out of the house, you still have a lot of life to live after that, and there's some validity in that. But I will say that regarding that woman's remarks on you being in your best shape in your 20s, that's true for some people, and for other people, we take care of ourselves and we make sure that we stay in good shape. And unless you have like a physical disability or a disorder that prevents you from doing so, there's really no reason why you shouldn't be able to stay in good shape well into your 40s and beyond. So look, please don't listen to people like this who like to fearmonger and try to convince women to get married and have kids at a young age. Because generally speaking, it is not the best time for you to do that. If your frontal lobe doesn't finish developing until you're 25, in my eyes, you're a brand new adult at 25. If you're in your 20s, man or woman, your focus should be on you, bettering yourself. Not only is that going to benefit you in the long run, but it's going to benefit anyone who partners with you. Right now, you need to be focusing on your mental and physical health, figuring out the best diet for you, figuring out the best types of exercise for your lifestyle, figuring out the best ways to handle conflict and relationships in general. Learn a lot about psychology and relationships. It's going to help you in all facets of your life. And educate yourself. Focus on getting an education in all areas right now. That's what you need to be doing. Don't worry about relationships. Sure, if you want to date, that's great, but your goal shouldn't be to hurry up, settle down, get married, and have kids. The woman in that video said that in your 20s, you have the best possible chance of getting the best partners. That's false. Especially if you're a woman. You want to know why? Because when you're a young woman, because of the way society is, everyone's going to be after you. And why is this bad? Because in your 20s, you lack the experience to discern whether someone's after you for the right or wrong reasons. Unless you're a unicorn who had amazing parents and who taught you well, it's very likely that you're going to end up in a very bad relationship just because everyone wants a piece of you. And it's going to be hard for you to differentiate who's right and who's not. And especially if you're dating someone else in their 20s, they're most likely going to be very immature as well. I mean, especially if you are dating men, which is essentially what this conversation is about. They say that women mature faster than men. So if you're, let's say 25 even, you're dating a man who's 25, developmentally, he's going to be probably a couple years behind you. But you likely still lack the experience needed to tell you to not entertain a relationship with someone like that. When I was 25, I dated a 21-year-old guy, and it was one of the worst decisions of my life. I posted a story time about it on YouTube. It actually ended up in a restraining order and some stalking. And you would think, you're older, how could you fall into that? Because I didn't know. Because I didn't know what to look for. I called things off when I thought it was time, but I should have called it off way sooner. I was lacking in experience. And so your thought might be, okay, fine, then I'll date an older man. Okay, but how old are we talking? Because a large age gap is also very dangerous for you. Men who are older, they have a lot of life experience. And if they are dating with nefarious intentions, they know how to manipulate you because you're younger, because you lack experience. So they can take advantage of you. They can be psychologically, mentally, physically abusive in ways that are insidious but hard for you to spot because they have had a lot of time to hone their skills in being deceptive and just terrible. They've had more time to learn how to trick young women. They've had more time to figure out how to convince the people around that young woman that they are a good guy. They have a lot more experience in life and know ways to isolate you better than a younger guy could.
Some men like to date younger women because they're easier to manipulate. You know, they're still learning. They don't really know their worth. They just want a man, this and that, so they can do certain things with them that they can't do with the woman that's mature. So them trying to date a mature woman, you know, they don't feel like they're in control a lot of the times because it's like, she not playing with me. She not letting me do this. She not letting me play with her, this and that. Like, no, that's the difference between a real woman and a young woman that's trying to learn. So a lot of these older men that date these younger women, they do it because they have an advantage over them mentally.
It's just, you can't expect these men that are 20, 30 years older than you guys to be good quality men. I think it's weird that a man that's 20 years older than a woman would want her. Because that says to me, you couldn't pull anybody in your age group, or the women in your age group know what's up with you. They already know that you're toxic. And so you have to try to groom some young girl like Jay-Z did Beyonce. Just saying. And I don't care what y'all say, that's called grooming.
Can you end up in a long, healthy, happy relationship when you're in your 20s? It's possible, but the chances of that only increase as you get older. So what's the rush? And if you're worried about not being able to have kids when you're older, let me remind you or educate you on the fact that history has lied to us. They've told us that it being harder to have kids as you get older as a woman is due to you, but oftentimes it ends up being the man's health that dictates that. Unless you've already started going through menopause, your focus, if you want to have children, should be on making sure that the man you want to procreate with is as healthy as possible. Because if he isn't, yes, you could end up having a miscarriage, but you can also end up with other horrible health conditions. Preeclampsia is one of them. Just your overall pregnancy could be awful if you are procreating with someone who is not healthy because his sperm affects your body. See, the issue is when we are so stuck on timelines on our biological clock, it can push us into making very bad decisions. That's when women end up getting with men who are just no good for them and who end up causing them a lot of harm. That's when women end up bringing men into their lives who are dangerous to their own children. Ladies, you need to start decentering men, especially if you want to eventually get married and have kids. Why? Because it's going to make it a lot harder for a guy to pull one over on you. When you've decentered men, you're not going to let them get away with rushing you into marriage or having kids, because you'll realize that they aren't the prize and neither is marriage. You'll be able to think rationally and see marriage as something beautiful between you and someone else you love who loves you, not as some societal expectation that you need to fulfill. So look, I could go on and on and on about this. There's so much to say, and I just want to hold your hand if you're one of those women who feel like you have to hurry up and get married and have kids. Here, hold my hand. If you're not financially stable, if you care about what your peers think about you to the point where you're willing to act out of character just to fit in, if you are a people pleaser and are willing to keep toxic people around you, family or otherwise, if you think a man's opinion matters more than your own, if you feel that you need to shrink yourself in order to make sure the man in your life feels important, if you want to have kids to fill a hole in your life, or because your family is pressuring you to do so, if the guy you're with is trying to rush you into marriage and or having kids, if you're willing to give up your hopes, goals, dreams, and aspirations for a man, you are not ready to get married or have kids. So please focus on yourself right now, build yourself up, and worry about relationships and kids later. And don't listen to people like the woman in that video. And never trust anyone who tries to rush you into anything, because this is what's known as a high pressure sales tactic. Instances in which people try to get you to spend your money now, hurry up, the deal's going fast. If you feel like you're being pressured into hurrying up and making a lifelong decision, that's a huge red flag. No life-altering decisions like getting married or having kids should be made in a hurry. If a car salesman tried to make you rush and buy a car and you did so because you felt pressured, and then the car ended up being a lemon, you would be furious. Well, now imagine instead of a car, you got married and had kids in a hurry and you ended up in a terrible relationship. Imagine how that would feel.